Hey, good evening. It's Wednesday, January 29th, and welcome back to Everyday Talk 24/7. I want to continue to understand the impact of what it means to be conformed to the pattern of this world. Paul's strong language, don't be conformed to the pattern of this world. Don't think like the world thinks, but rather be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And we've been looking at this in the area of education. We looked at the media, we looked at entertainment. Now we're looking at how education is impacted when we conform. When we conform to the pattern of this world, we wind up with something called secular education. And there are a lot of good folks that work in education that are trying to do the great job. Many Christians are trying to work in that field. But the problem is the view that is put forth in secular education, which means that God is not part of the picture. That's conformity to this world. See, being transformed means that we follow Solomon's direction. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline and instruction. That means without the fear of the Lord, I cannot know what it means to be wise. I cannot be truly educated and instructed. So when we conform to this pattern of secular education, education without God, how's that working out for us? That's the question I want to ask. And I have 6 points here. What is the impact on children who are taught to believe, 1, that life evolved from non-life? There is no God, there is no creator God, but rather out of non-life came life. No matter how sophisticated people get and they talk about patterns and growth and evolution, this is the one inescapable problem that they can't solve. But children are taught, nevertheless, life evolved from non-life. If you're not going to teach God, this is the only option you got. 2, that laws are evolved from human intent and constantly are in a state of change depending upon which human has the power and is in control. Think about the impact of that on children. That is unsettling. Laws can change in a heartbeat. Up, down, whichever. We see that happen with things like abortion, things like marriage, things like what it means to be honest. 3rd, what is the impact on a child and on children when we are taught that there are no moral absolutes, only changing evolutionary patterns and mores? No moral absolutes. Without God, you cannot have an absolute. So anything in morality can change. What's the impact about children when we teach that? 4, that at any time new information may be discovered or emerge or come to light that may change the whole purpose and plan of humanity. How does that working out for children? People used to believe that the purpose of humanity, in this country at least, was to glorify God and honor Him. Not anymore. And that can always change. 5, and just 6 things. There are myriad more, but just 6. 5, the gender is determined by human will. The impact of that on a child. That there is not a creator, that humans can change their gender. The enormous insecurity that hits children with is devastating, and we're seeing it play out. And then 6th, marriage in traditional 2-parent homes are optional. And there are plenty of outstanding single-parent homes because people don't believe in marriage anymore, or they can get out of marriage, or they think divorce is a good option. What's the impact on our children? We go anywhere from single-parent homes to the extreme of something called polyamory, which is now the law in several states, which means that you can have any number of people of different sexes and genders involved in some type of a family unit. Those are just 6 things. There are many, many, many more, but just imagine those 6 things on the impact of children. And then what does this produce? What kind of culture does this produce? Again, this is my estimate, my assessment. There are plenty of facts and figures to back all this up, but I'm not going to wander into those things. If you want to ask me about them, go ahead and ask. But here are several things that a culture produces that is rooted in secular education. That culture becomes anxious, depressed, worried. And we see the rise of anxiety meds and issues and things. Anxiety is on the rise. That produces a fear-driven mindset where we are concerned about fear and we begin to fear everything because there is no God who is a constant. That produces, it's kind of a trickle-down effect here, or domino effect. That produces a divided place, a divided culture. We're anxious and we're fear-driven, and then we become divided. That results in a selfish, unsatisfied people who only want to serve themselves, but the more we serve ourselves, the more unsatisfied and unfulfilled we become. That's a picture of our society. Because of this selfishness and because of human power, this leads to the next point. You have a culture that exploits and objectifies women. Ours does that. We don't value women as women. They're objects. We exploit them in any number of ways. This culture becomes increasingly cynical because there's nothing to believe in. So the further we get away from, say, a period of time, 1933, when you had the Humanist Manifesto, which declared we don't need God anymore, and that's probably the strongest influence in our schools right now, signed by John Dewey, one of the signers, incredibly influential in our schools. We become cynical. We have no hope. And then lastly, we become increasingly violent. And we're seeing these things all play out in our culture. Why? Many, 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 many reasons, but most centrally, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Any education system that does not have that as its bedrock is a secular system and produces these things. We're going to finish this up on education tomorrow night and give a more positive view and one of hope. But we need to take a good hard look and say, how's secular education? How's it working out for us? And without God, it can't, and it isn't, and it's not. Thank you for being here tonight, and again, love your thoughts and feedback, and Lord willing, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Good night.